Well, hello, and welcome to another lesson of the Focus on Contentstack course. I am Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, get a hold of me right there, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. I am so impressed with myself because I finally figured this out. I could do it without even looking, which is, usually look over there to make sure I'm not missing, and I'm not missing it. It's right there. Perfect. All right, so welcome. Today I have a special guest presenter. His name is Nick Barron. He's the Director of Partner Enablement at Contentstack, and he's going to show us how to integrate a personalization engine. Today's case is going to be uniform, but in general, the process will be the same across any other personalization engine. We'll walk through the content model, we'll look at some code, we'll see how to install the app, how to use it from the authoring perspective. It's going to be really packed with a bunch of information today. But as always, as you all know, I want to tell you first where you'll be able to get the on-demand version. You'll be able to get the on-demand version here on headlesscreator.com. Of course, we're showing you the landing page of this lesson right now, but you'll be able to go to the course, Focus on Contentstack, and then you'll be able to see it down there. It'll be, here we go, 521, which is today. Unbelievable that is Friday. Happy Friday, by the way, to everybody. So you'll find it over there. It's a free registration. Register for free. You'll have full access to this course, but you also have access to all the other courses, including Content Modeling Weekly, which we all know on any headless CMS project. It all starts with a really good scalable content model. So you'll have access, 100% access to that for free. I do weekly lessons on that. So again, register there. You'll get it all for free. Follow me on all the social media networks as you see down there. And that's that. So well, that's it for the marketing portion of this section. As you know, I'm going to restart the intro because the on-demand version won't have any marketing at all on it. We'll jump into the lesson. So I will see all of you in just 30 seconds. Well, hello, and welcome to another lesson of the Focus on Contentstack course. I'm Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. You can get a hold of me, as always, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com, right there. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Today, I have a special guest. His name is Nick Barron. He's the Director of Partner Enablement at Contentstack. And as you know by the title, we're going to be talking about and seeing how to integrate a personalization engine into Contentstack. In this case, we're using Uniform, but what you're going to learn today will be very general, where you can integrate other personalization engines. We're going to go through the content model. We'll see how the author experiences that personalization. Also, we'll look at some code to see what to do from the development side. It's going to be a really neat lesson today. But I'm not going to tell you too much about Nick because I'm actually going to invite Nick. Nick, welcome to the lesson.
Hey, Marcelo. Nice to see you again.
Glad to have you here. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. Where are you located?
I am in sunny New Hampshire.
And is it sunny right now? It looks like based on your windows.
Yeah, today it is. It's always hit or miss.
Right. Yeah. East Coast weather is like, if you don't like it, wait 15 minutes, right? And then it'll change.
Oh, 100%. I'm just glad that we're done with the white stuff falling from the sky now. So.
Oh yeah, I spent some time in Boston in my in-laws, and snow is nice until you have to live with it and then deal with that, and especially your driveway where you have to clear it, and it's not fun.
100%.
Yeah, totally. Well, welcome. I know we're going to jump into the lesson, but before we do that, tell us real quick, your background, even before you got to Contentstack.
Sure. So always been in sort of the IT software world. So worked for other content management companies right out of college, actually. Got the chance to move abroad, lived over in Europe for about 10 years, kind of went around there, did a lot of sightseeing, got to do neat business in neat locations. So yeah, content has always been sort of at the core of my career. So it was cool to come back to the States and kind of continue that on.
Now, do you have a technical background like in development as well, or?
Yeah, I do. So, I mean, I'm a classically trained .NET developer.
Oh,
I actually started going to school for philosophy, and then quickly decided to shift that into a more marketable skill.
I see.
So, yeah, so definitely, very technical. Always worked in sort of the support, pre-sales, developer enablement, all of those kind of things. So,
Cool,
yeah.
cool. And so you said you travel all over Europe. Do you have a favorite country or a spot that you like?
I would have to say the waterfalls of Kravitska, and I'm probably butchering the name, in Bosnia. Went camping
Oh,
out there and just phenomenal. Just a wonderfully, beautifully green, kind of pseudo untouched area of the world. So,
well, and how did you pick that? I mean, of all places, like people would go, "Oh, I'm going to Europe. I'll go to France. I'll go to, the standard stuff, right?" How did you pick Bosnia?
I actually lived in Sarajevo for about a year,
Oh,
working for a digital agency. So that was that was quite fun. It was very interesting, and yeah, just beautiful country, wonderful places to go and visit, really deep, rich culture. So yeah, it was thoroughly enjoyable.
very cool, very cool. All right. Well, we're ready for your lesson. We'll go ahead and share your screen right now. And there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on mute. If anybody has questions, I'll jump in and ask. Obviously, people know I always jump in and ask. I always have tons of questions, especially when you get to the content modeling stuff. So it's all yours.
Excellent. Thank you. So I guess first what I wanted to do is start with a big picture view, right? So what is this going to look like once we've gone through some exercises? And here we've got this little kind of demonstration site that's powered by both Contentstack and Uniform, which is the personalization platform we'll be talking about today. And so as we can see, this is just a pretty simple homepage. It's got some information about different conference kind of talks that are going on. And then this big sort of hero that we have here. And quite simply, if we go and start looking at things, right? So if I come over to this developers page and then come back to the home page, it's starting to realize that I might have the intentions of a developer and I might be interested in developer focused information. And we can also see that down here when we start looking at things like lists that are getting reordered. So this might actually be a list of about 6 or 8 items, but the platform is going to pick the top ranked things based on what other interests I have. So if I, come in here and look at marketing content, and then let's say we do that one more time, so we can see that go from developer over to marketing. We've got what we like to call intent, right? We've got these things that we want to do. We've got a reason for coming to a digital property, and we always do, right? As humans, when we visit a website or we interact with a mobile app or a smart speaker skill, whatever it might be, there's always a reason that we're doing these things. And how we're going to be tracking that intent is through what Uniform's doing here. And if we look, we can see that it's actually going to start listening to this information, and we can store that and see it here, right? So we can see that we've got something called dev, we've got something called marketer. So this is figuring out sort of a score based on all of the things that we've done or bits of information that we might know about the person. So combining all of that into these different scores to help us figure out what are the right topics of conversation that we should approach with somebody, and also being able to do that in a way where we're not just thinking about sort of the winner of those scores, but also doing things like combining those, so that now that we have quite a high interest in both of those, a keen eye will have noticed that Jamstack 101 went kind of to that primary seat because we have such a high interest in both of these things. And that's one of those things that you need to kind of think about when it comes to personalization. Is not just, oh, if someone does something, then do something else. And for us, technologists in the field, it's quite a hard thing sometimes to stop thinking about the if-then statements, that have kind of structured how we write and think about code for such a long period of time, and start thinking about these as more, what does the human want to be doing? How does the human want to be engaging with us as a brand, or with something like website? Because when we think about it, there's usually a reason that somebody's interacting, right? So if we think about this, this fake conference that we have, our end goal might be to get people visiting this site to come over to the registration page. So if that's the case, then what we want to do is we want to drive them towards that end goal that they probably have by coming here. And we want to do it in a way that that targets them with appropriate content that helps them along whatever their journey is with us as a brand to get from, let's say, landing page or homepage to whatever that completion activity is, which in this case would be, maybe registering for a conference, but that might also be, finding a great deal on a product if we're talking about e-commerce, or, even just simply consuming the right information. If we think about something like, a pharmaceutical, journey you might be on with them, you might be looking for some very specific pharma information that you need to find. And, when you think about how it's kind of easy to do this on a small scale, right? Where, in this case, we just have a couple of pages and we're figuring out what somebody's interest is. But where this becomes very powerful, but also a little bit more complex, is when we scale that up to millions of pieces of content potentially. So there's this big sort of differentiator, right, where we need to stop thinking sort of about these small if-then conditionals and really get to that sort of that big picture of, how do we do this at scale across all these different channels and touch points. And I think, one of the core tenets of the mock approach, or the microservices, API, cloud native, and headless approach, is to be able to decouple these things, but also still have them connected. So while we're talking about that, let us jump over and take a look at a simple architecture diagram. So here we can see this is what we'll be looking at today, right? So over on the left-hand side, we've got sort of our SaaS different tooling that we're working with here. And again, this is usually going to have a lot more things in sort of that stack over there. But in this case, to keep things very purposeful, we'll look at the way in which we can just connect two of these, right? So that's going to be Uniform and Contentstack. And we're going to integrate those things in a very straightforward way so that we can use the intent tagging capabilities of Uniform. And we'll look at that a little bit more deeply. And we can map that into the different content items within Contentstack. And then there's going to be some cool automation stuff built in, right? So when we publish something, either in Uniform or in Contentstack, that's going to go out and that's going to tell, either Netlify or GitHub, you need to, make this change, and that's going to automate the build process, which is then going to show up onto that live website that we were just looking at. But I guess the big thing to think about is the fact that those two systems are going to be intrinsically connected. And the way in which we're going to do that is going to expose a simple control for somebody to use from an editorial perspective. So when we're modeling the content, we'll have the option of just putting that element in as a property. And then the content author will be able to just use that, maybe with, very little understanding of what's actually happening. But now we're in effect categorizing things. So we'll get a little bit deeper into that once we go in. So the first thing that we need to think about is, well, how are we going to connect these two things together, right? So, it's nice and easy on this diagram. There's just an arrow that connects them, but that's never as simple as something is, right? So if we come in, and we can start in one of two ways, right? So I could either come into Uniform. So we're logged in here, and we can see that I've got, a few different projects running. But if we come in here and say that we'd like to create a new one, and this is going to be Headless Creator 2, what we can do is Uniform actually provides us a really easy way to get all of this stuff integrated, connected, and live by using this deploy a starter Jamstack. So as we say continue, it's going to allow us to choose whichever headless CMS we want to use. I'm quite partial to Contentstack, so I think we'll use that one today. Netlify's good hosting service. Let's do it in Next. And I don't actually have any live analytics to connect to. So we can simply kind of go through these things, log into Contentstack. And this is now going to allow me to look at all the different organizations that I have within Contentstack. So let's just use my personal one. And then we can click here, and this is going to automate the creation of the stack within Contentstack. It's going to create the extension for us. It's going to tie all the API keys together, and it's going to send all of that off to be built on Netlify, which will be sort of the next step. So now it's in effect created all the scaffolding for us, and it's now just putting in some generic content for us to start with.
Quick question for you.
Sure.
So this obviously created a new stack and set up everything. But of course, if you already have a stack and you want to connect it, in this case to Uniform, you would go, I guess, the other way around, right? You do it from the Contentstack side, which I think you're going to show that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. So this is sort of option one of two.
Right. Right. If you need a new stack created, then this will do that.
Yeah, then this would be a great way. Or if you just want to sort of try it out, if you just want to have a play around, right? I firmly believe the best way to learn something right is by kind of getting childish and playing around. I think that's sort of one of the core tenets of creativity, right? Is giving somebody that freedom to see, oh, what can these two things do together? Just mess around a little bit, figure out kind of how the things work together, and then you can come up with really cool and
Right.
engaging ways of doing that. Yeah.
Very cool. Thanks.
So we're just going to click deploy to Netlify, and then this is going to go in and ask us to do things like connect to GitHub. So you can already see how this is sort of connecting all of these different things that we have here. And let's give this a reasonable name, Headless Creator 2. And you can see this has pulled out all of the different tokens and API keys, right? So it's really tying all these different things together, even onto the front end for us. This is even going to create the webhooks in Contentstack so that if we publish a piece of content, it'll tell Netlify, hey, you need to do a dynamic rebuild here. So this is all pretty neat, right? The fact that, one of the things us as developers always want, we want that one magic button that you can just push and then magic happens. And Uniform's just done a great job of kind of tying all these things together in a really kind of easy to manage way. But let's let that kind of do its thing in the background. And we can just see here that we actually have this up and running with the previous kind of install that we had. And this is running on headlesscreator.netlify.app. And if we look at this, we'll see, if we look at our deploys, we'll see that this has been sort of being published by content publishes as well as by the uniform triggers as well. So as we're making changes in these different stacks here, and we'll kind of pull our diagram up again, just so that we can sort of think about this. These are all pushing changes either directly into GitHub or Netlify, and then that's something that we can experience live. So that's kind of a core thing that happens here when we start thinking about, these different Jamstack approaches, or as we call them, the mock approaches, where it's not just enough to have these things sort of integrated with each other from sort of a content and ID stitching perspective, but they also need to be able to cause things to happen. They need to kick off a process. So something like a deployment. All right, so that is sort of one way that we can get everything set up into something like our this example site that we have here, and what that's done in the back end for us. So those of you who are a little familiar with Contentstack are going to know that we have what are called extensions. So extensions are how we have integrations and extensions, mind the term, within our UI, so that we can provide capability or flexibility or feature enhancements into the product without having to go in and actually change, sort of source code or anything like that. So it's a great way to provide additional capabilities to editors within this single pane of glass. And when we come in and look at what makes up an extension, it's actually quite straightforward. So in this case, Uniform is hosting that integration itself, right? So the integration is just a snippet of code of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript typically. There might be some server-side calls going on in the back end, depending on which platform you're connecting to. But this is the same process we would typically use for any of the different personalization engines that there's either, out-of-the-box integrations for, or field integrations that people need